Captain America Brave New World was directed by Julius Ona and is the latest movie in Phase 5 of the MCU. This once again stars Anthony Mackie as Sam Wilson, who has now very much taken on the mantle of Captain America after the events of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, as well as the end of Avengers Endgame. And here he has to stop a conspiracy against President Thaddeus Ross, played by Harrison Ford, which seems to be connected to a much larger scheme that could send major countries into a war and decimate international relations on a scale that could be potentially unfixable, and also deal with an enemy who is in the shadows and seems to be manipulating everything as the movie proceeds. It's been a while since Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It just hit me earlier when I was going to see this. That was in 2021. In a few weeks' time, that'll be 4 years old. So it's been a while coming for Sam Wilson, this movie. And now it's finally going to be in theaters this weekend. And going into it, I was excited to see it because I think Sam Wilson's a really cool character. And there are things in this movie that seem to be connecting to stuff from the past of the MCU that many people have been waiting a long time to see addressed. And there is a lot of that in this movie. I'll talk more about that in a second. But first, let's start with some of the positives of this film. Once again, Anthony Mackie is really good. I think he does a great job as Captain America now, and he takes on the role with the level of responsibility that it needs. And I think he is a worthy successor in this to Steve Rogers. Of course, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier proved that pretty well. But in this movie, as the going gets tough, he very much does embody the character quite nicely, and I'm excited to see more of him as Captain America going forward. I think he's very solid in the film. Danny Ramirez as Joaquin Torres, the new Falcon, I thought he was very good, and the rapport between him and Mackie was very good in the movie as well. I thought the two of them had some great banter back and forth, and there were definitely hints in there of what Steve and Sam used to have when, Steve was still Captain America. So it's nice to see some of that carry forward. The real MVP of the movie, though, as I'm sure many can guess, is Harrison Ford. He is really good as Ross, but he's also having just the time of his life playing the role. It's very clear that when he came to set every time for this, he was just having a blast just being there. And eventually, when it comes to the bigger moments of his, no pun intended, where he puts on a little bit of red, it's pretty cool. You can't lie. Harrison Ford is a Hulk in this movie. And I have to imagine those, motion capture sessions or whatever they have done were a time and a half. That must have been very, very entertaining. And he's very good in the movie. The action is also, for the most part, pretty solid. There's a couple of sequences in the first half of the movie that felt a little bit choppy, and there were some aspects to it that I felt could have been a bit better. But as it approaches the third act of the movie, some of the bigger moments that you've seen some of it teased up in the trailers, they're pretty solid. And there was some tension to a couple of those moments that were, that is genuinely a bit palpable at times, and I thought that looked pretty solid for the most part. Some CGI over here and there could have been a little more refined, but I was very invested in some of those action moments. It also has a really good score from Laura Karpman, and when it comes to some of the themes and storylines that it's tackling, some of it builds on what the Falcon and the Winter Soldier did. I thought those were the more effective parts of the narrative, especially because it really carries forward from those. It feels like an expansion of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier in that sense. It very much does, keep it in line with that, stylistically, as well as in some of the writing. And I thought those moments, did seamlessly pull themselves together quite nicely. There are, however, other things with the narrative that are going on, especially when it comes to some of the grander, scales things, especially when it connects to movies from the past of the MCU, that I feel like things become a little scattershot. And this is where I enter the not so positive part of the review, because while it is doing some stuff very effectively, and there is a sense of entertainment and fun to most of the movie, there's also a lot of stuff where it's trying to juggle way too many plot lines and trying to be way too much at the same time. And whenever that happens, it loses its way. Particularly when it comes to tying up loose ends from other Marvel movies in the past. The big one is The Incredible Hulk. In fact, in a lot of ways, this feels like a sequel to The Incredible Hulk, more so than it does a sequel to The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Down to the fact that the villain of this movie is someone that you met in The Incredible Hulk. I don't think that's a spoiler. That seems to be pretty known information, so I'm not really, I don't think I'm giving away anything over there. But it does help to have seen that movie, because there are a couple of things that he does that, there are nice reference points. Like every now and then there's a little thing that pops up and you go, oh yeah, that was in the previous movie. That's a callback to that. I like that. And so there are those little details spread out in here, and those were interesting. But because it's trying to do too much with it, it drowns out some of the other poignant stuff that it can do, particularly when it comes to some of its themes. There are aspects of it that it wants to address, particularly the socio-political landscape of the world that they're in. That's something The Falcon and the Winter Soldier was also tackling. And similar to that show, sometimes it does some decent things, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it nails the commentary, sometimes it plays second fiddle with it. And it can be a little frustrating, especially when it's trying to go for something deeper at times and it doesn't quite hit that mark. And whenever that happens, it just becomes a little bit frustrating, because that's a major chunk of some of the second half's narrative, and it's like, well, this is not really working as well as it could. Also, the villain himself, a bit underdeveloped, because I think there are cool aspects to this villain, but you just don't get a lot of time with it. And eventually he is another villain. Like, I mean, it is very much just a thing that's there. In that sense, you can almost say that it feels like a callback to early MCU, where you had some of those villains that were just kind of there. But I will say there are those who are big fans of The Incredible Hulk who will be very pleased with the fact that this movie references that quite a bit. I mean, it finally really acknowledges that movie after all these years. The other movie it acknowledges is Eternals. Now, if you watched Eternals, you've been wondering probably for the last 3 years, what the hell happened to the Celestial in the middle of the ocean? That's a thing in this movie, and there are things going on with that which are included in here. And so it recanonizes some of that as well. So you can all breathe a sigh of relief if you've been asking for the last few years what happened to the Celestial. Your prayers have been answered. And so there are some things like that. But overall, when I walked out of Brave New World, I thought the movie was fine. I didn't particularly love it as much, because I feel like it was trying to do way too many things and it doesn't land everything. But at the same time, there are some fun moments in there. There's a solid cast. Like I said, some of the action's pretty good. I think for the most part, it does work just enough. I wouldn't call this, however, one of the best MCU movies by any means. And I have a feeling it's going to undoubtedly be compared to Winter Soldier and Civil War in particular. I don't think it matches those as well. But at the same time, whatever they plan on doing next with Sam Wilson, I would like to see. I think Anthony Mackie is very good as Captain America over here. And I am looking forward to the future with him as Cap, and eventually leading into the bigger stuff that's going to come very, very soon. I'm going to give Captain America Brave New World a 7 out of 10. Given the amount of press around this movie, like there were so many doomsday predictions around it, maybe my expectations were mostly fine, and the movie that I just watched was mostly fine. Maybe you'll like it more than I did, maybe you'll like it way lesser than I did. I have no idea, but that's about where I stand on that. Guys, thank you very much as always for watching. Look forward to more videos very, very soon. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the movies.